Buzzers and buzzettes, welcome to our first glorious cosplay run in Elden Ring. Today I have the honor of presenting to you Son Goku cosplay.
Take a chance, big now. In my maze, I'm never alone. How can we see? We can, ICHIGO KUROSAKI. Take a heart to let us know. Hold on, I see you in nothing. Survive.
Let's start by setting up some ground rules. The idea behind this run is to make the build as accurate to Dragon Ball poster boy Son Goku, so I'm not allowed to use anything that Kakarot himself didn't use in the series. This rule is gonna be a little stretchy at times, but as long as I can compare an item into the game to a technique or an attack that he used in the anime, it's okay to use. I also gotta admit that despite me having hundreds of hours in Elden Ring, I am not all that good and I jumped into the build without any prior preparations or research. So let's just say this build is not skibidi sigma like the younglings nowadays would say. No? They don't say that anymore. Well, then I'm a young. Weapons we are out for this build are clubs and large clubs, LARPing as Jingo Stick aka Extendo Pole, Cestus, LARPing as Fist because Goku is first and foremost a martial artist, Dry Leaf Arts, same reason as the previous, also its weapon art is LARPing Ryuken aka Dragon Fist, any catalyst for spell usage, we just have to pretend we are casting with our hands. As for the spells themselves, we can use Renala's Full Moon, for Genki Dama aka Spirit Bomb, Comet Azure as Kamehameha, Glintstone Pebble, Glintstone Shards and Glintstone Stars as basic Ki Blast. Light Discus for Kienzan aka Destructo Disc. Flame Grant Me Strength for Kaioken and or Super Saiyan God. With this build alone you can probably tell it's gonna be a very heavily intelligence dependent, so you would be correct to assume my weapons should be infused with intelligence scaling. You're probably asking yourself, did he actually do it? All I'm gonna say is my real life intelligence is not very high, but we'll talk about this later. Also, as you probably figured that out from my footage presented, this entire build was played on multiple streams, so I'll take a second to shamelessly plug myself. This run is a self-contained video from beginning to an end, but it's not just an one shot. I'm doing an entire series of cosplay runs in Elden Ring, that being my main game. But we do play different ones on streams. As we speak, we're halfway through another cosplay that I'll be foreshadowing at the end of this video. If you enjoy this type of content, you can pay me a visit. I stream every day starting around 5 PM GMT +1 because I'm not European, Polish to be precise. And yes, I'm a VTuber, but I'm not like the other girls. Mainly because I'm not a girl. Anyway, enough yapping, let's go Super Saiyaning! The run started with me trying to get R3's favorite to boost my maximum HP and stamina for an quote-unquote easier experience in the early game, but I quickly, 6 deaths in, realized that I will not be able to get past the flame-spewing pillar and gave up. Then, for the next hour or two, I ran around the lands between collecting all the health upgrades I could remember. Some people consider it cheating, especially during the challenge runs, but first of all, this is not a challenge run. Second of all, the game allows you to access all the locations such as Liurnia of the Lakes and Altus Plateau without killing a single boss. So I'm not doing anything the game itself didn't allow. Was I overprepared in the healing department because of that? Yes. Do I feel ashamed? Considering how underprepared I was for the big parts of the late game challenges, not at all. On my way I also grabbed Cestus so I could abandon the extending stick before the game actually started. Like I've said, it was allowed in this run, but I felt uncomfortable using it because Goku spent most of his life fighting with fists. His monkey-style fighting days ended very early, but with the saddle as a train to the face foreshadowing, let me just say this is not the last time we'll be using a Jingo Bang. I upgraded my fists and spread a little with Master Roshi until he said we are ready to challenge the Crane School in a serious fight, and then he went off to read magazines. He must be very fond of fashion design, because who reads this many Victoria's Secrets magazines? I equipped Radagon's Sword Seal for some extra damage, and both boldly and boldly, just like my sensei, thanks to the chat's input, went to challenge Nepheli Lu. Why did I do it? Because, honestly, I thought she's gonna drop a golden seed, but I guess I larped my knowledge about the game since she doesn't drop that. This is also time I should mention this is a specific version of Goku, or should I say Kakarot, because this is supposed to be a version of him who never hit his head in his childhood, and was still Saiyan at heart and at soul. Why was that decision made, and why only now after I mentioned sparring with Roshi and calling him my master? Mainly because I wanted to kill Kenneth Hyde for his golden seed, and I couldn't find any better reasoning to that, because Goku would not just kill random person, but Kakarot definitely would if it meant pushing his goal of conquering the Earth any further. Nefeli stood in my way to conquering the planet for the Great Saiyan Empire, so she got quickly dispatched, and right after that I challenged our next serious opponent, Tien Shinha. Because Tien had that technique where he grew extra hands from his bag, and like Godric has extra arms too. I know I'm reaching, but let me laugh. Even with this awesome technique of Dragon Hand, he didn't stand a chance, so we sent him to Hiku. We went to the Saiyan mothership to replenish our strength and catch up on supplies, but Crane School didn't appreciate us being their most relevant student, so they've sent an assassin after us. He was even less problematic, so we set him up with a visit with Tien Shinhan and moved on. In Raya Lucaria, we've retrieved our Saiyan armor that had been stolen from us on our arrival, and beat up the culprit behind the deed. His gravity controlling techniques were nothing compared to us. I mean, Planet Vegeta's gravity was way higher than whatever he could dish out, so we took our revenge very easily. Further into the castle, we got visited by an unexpected cameo. I guess this is a crossover episode because we fought Kyuubi, answering the age-old debate. Can Goku solo Narutoverse? Yes. The answer is yes. And it wasn't even close. Remember, Saiyan never runs for a fight, he only tactically retreats to come back with a Zenkai boost. Too bad we didn't get the rematch because this knight clearly never mastered the flight technique and got defeated by gravity. What I didn't expect is to be greeted by King Kai next, or should I say Queen Kai? She didn't appreciate how many of the Earth's defenders we've sent to her little paradise planet. Get it? Cause it's really small? And showed us a couple of techniques that we couldn't help but appreciate. We were so impressed, we've actually copied them later on. I guess she must have been close friend of Roshi's because she could use Kamehameha. What a small world. Another small world reference. We dispatched of her, but since she proved useful, the Saiyan Empire, instead of ordering us to exterminate, gave us an order to enslave her, used to our tactical advantage. Dark, isn't it? Well, what did you expect from a FromSoft game? Fighting a literal god of our galaxy made me realize the quest is only gonna get tougher from now on. So we decided to train a little. First, a little bit of ki training, so we were able to use ki blast from now on. Old Kai also totally consensually and not by force taught us Kaioken. We ventured into a dangerous poisonous cave to get our new talisman that's gonna stick with us until the end of our journey, and thus began the training arc. I went back after the entry medallion for the slight boost that honestly wasn't even worth the struggle, and under the influence of a full moon went on an Ozaru rampage killing streak, killing all the Knights Cavalries, Deathbirds and L3 avatars that were misfortunate enough to stand in my way and dozed off to sleep. When we awoken, we were greeted by a big chichid lady named Chichi, talking something about marriage or something like that. Never heard of it, but it must have been an Earth delicacy, so I said why not, and decided to spare her. Later in a cave we fought a flightless dragon, because I've heard their balls can grant us any wish as long as you collect 7 of them, but here's the problem. The dragon didn't have any balls, yet alone 7 of them, so it must have been only a local legend. Sometime after our recent exploits got us invited to participate in a fighting festival. On Vegeta we hosted a lot of tournaments because fighting for Saiyans it was a way of life and a good entertainment. But I don't think Earthlings understood what tournament was. Instead of making it a series of matches, it was only a fight against a strong opponent, so similar to a champion defending his title, but they wanted us to fight all against him alone. That wasn't very prideful, so I refused and decided to fight alone. But I heard stories of this so-called General Radan being one of the strongest Earthlings in existence, so I decided to not get cocky and train a little. We've had a hard sparring session against one of Knight's Cavalry. I think he wasn't very happy for us killing his brethren and wanted revenge. I died to him like 20 times at least, but most of the deaths were due to the fact I tried to cheese him, and I have no idea how other speedrunners and challenge runners are doing it. Like, even after watching a tutorial on how to cheese him, I couldn't do it, so I decided to just beat him fair and square. Which took some time, because not only I suck, but Cestus is not a very good weapon. Not to mention he was tanky and I was underleveled. This is gonna be a very common trope from now on. We finally defeated him and continued our training by repeatedly punching a dragon, trying to get the mythical Dragon Balls But what I didn't know at the time was that that was a she-dragon.
A girl dragon! Oh,
So she didn't have any balls to speak of. After getting 2 huge Zenkai boosts, we were finally ready for Earth's champion Radan. He did prove to be a formidable foe, but not problematic. Still, for an Earthling to be this strong and capable of rivaling Saiyan, it's impressive. After we've beaten him, I received a call. We were taking too long and the Saiyan Empire decided to send us some help in the form of Prince Vegeta. He was acting all high and mighty, for his blood was royal, but we showed him that with enough training, a low-class warrior can become formidable as well, even more so than born and raised elite. He had no choice but to respect us and join our mission, not as a leader, but as a support. Before heading to Leyndell's capital, I decided to make our cestus into magic cestus, so that was a smart decision seeing how we mostly upgraded intelligence anyway, just to reach the absurd amount of the stat we needed for Comet Azure and Renala's full moon. And that was a smart decision until later. For whatever reason I decided to double down and change its scaling. I've changed my stats so many times during this run I have no idea what was I doing myself. But just so you know, if you're gonna do a Goku run on your own, make your weapon scale with intelligence. It will be your dominant stat, not because you want to, but because you have to. We visited a certain mountain and trained Kamehameha. We figured out the basics for it, but we couldn't quite replicate it until much further into the adventure, so don't expect to see it yet. In the Leyndell capital, we fought a spirit of an actual strongest Earthling, and it was very pleasurable. He was both formidable and prideful, to the point I wasn't even sure if he really was an Earthling, or did he have some Saiyan in him. A couple moments later, we've had a rematch with Master Roshi, whose cane apparently hidden an entire sword underneath. Didn't expect him for a swordsman, to be honest. But I guess the amount of magazines he enjoyed throughout his life did make him capable of swinging it, if you know what I mean. For an old man he was quite formidable, but we did dispatch him eventually and moved to the next target. Our intel warned us before hidden parts of the world that were accessible only with a certain medallion. One part of the medallion we've already proclaimed from a certain crippled village. One was hidden behind a powerful guardian. I always considered Command Nail to be my nemesis, not as Goku but as me myself. Whenever I'm playing for myself, I'm usually playing an Inga Bunga big ass sword build, so I never actually learn how to fight against him. I usually just power through attacks and traded damage, hoping I will beat them before they beat me. To be honest, this run was a big eye-opener for me, because despite me having hundreds of hours in Elden Ring, there are still many opponents I never actually learned how to fight against. I just defeated them, but I didn't learn. Now that the cestus made me play more cautious, I had no other option but to play safe, not be greedy and actually improve. For example, Commander Nail has that electric stomp attack with a huge AoE explosion that I always struggled to dodge, and I remember it used to be so strong it could just straight up one-shot you. But I never figured out that instead of dodging it, it was better to jump over it, because the slash part of the attack isn't gonna hit you if you move slightly to the side. Eventually I managed to beat him, and I just know from now on he's gonna be way easier than I usually perceive him. That only shows how a player can beat an opponent without actually learning. I played through the game tens of times already with many different builds and cosplays. Just because you finish the game, it doesn't mean you've got good at it. Hitting your head on a brick wall until it breaks is different than actually conquering a challenge. And that also shows that even if an idiot such as myself is capable of beating the game with negative intelligence, everyone can beat it. It never needed an easy move. The game never had to change. It was the player. Anyway, after getting both parts of the medallion, we visited a certain tree snake dragon for his crystal tier that I thought worked a little different than it's working now. I swear to Beerus, last time I've played Elden Ring, and it was some time ago, this tier used to not only take away all FP costs of spells, but also allowed you to use spells that you didn't actually have stats for. I guess it must have been a bug, not a feature, but I wasn't aware that they patched that, and it came to bite me in the ass later. Despite military being level 6-7 and level 6-9, we decided to fight the Moog, and let me tell you something. Dee da dee dong dong, dee da dee dee dong. I will beat his ass! I'm done! It was very difficult. Again, Mog has to be one of the bosses I usually just skim past without actually learning how to fight. Because I don't know if it was just the weapon choice for the run, me being severely underleveled, or just my general skill issue, but I was struggling against him very hard. This is a noticeable pattern. I am a very greedy player and I hate waiting for my turn. I like to attack whenever and I usually pay the price for it. Not to mention my damage was low and Monk is very resistant to bleed, which I could cause with my weapon, just not very often. I consider Monk one of the 3 boss fights in Elden Ring that is actually bullshit and very unpleasant, especially in the second phase. Why does he steal my HP and heal so much even after using the tier that should counter his ability? It protects me from damage a little, but I think it should negate his healing as well. That is not the most annoying part though. The most annoying bit was him spewing the flaming blood everywhere, which was hard to track off, hard to dodge, and very often was comboing with his other attacks, causing an infinite stagger and a very annoying death. At a certain point I decided to change weapon to a bigger extendo stick because in my monkey brain big weapon equals big stagger and this is how I usually fight him. Sometimes I'm able to bum rush his ass so hard he doesn't even transition into his second phase before I kill him. But honestly, it didn't help at all. Up to this point I was doing the run mainly solo because I think that's what Goku would do. He wouldn't want anyone to help him and I wanted to prove myself that I can do it because in my off-screen camera playthroughs I'm not shy of using summons or spirits. I am a fan of using whatever the game provides me with and I think it's not embarrassing to use any help that you need if you feel like a challenge is too hard for you to do alone. At a certain point, even my viewers were telling me to summon Vegeta, and that's what I did. What I will never agree upon is that using spirits is an easy mode for scrubs, because even with my Mimic tier, it wasn't any easier. In the end, I locked in and managed to beat him, yes, with the help of Vegeta, but it wasn't like he carried me through the fight. Unlike with Commander Nail, I think I had a lot of luck beating Monk because sometimes he just surrounds himself with blood in a way that there's no way to even approach him. So with the combined effort of my Vegeta summon, me locking in, and good Monk's RNG, we've been able to beat him. But you know how many attempts did it take? Over 120. To put that into perspective, with a little bit of spoiler, later we died to Malenia a very similar amount of times. Slightly more, but still. Malenia is considered to be the strongest boss of the game, and even with the maximum lock-inning, it took me almost the same amount of attempts for Moog as it did for Malenia. All of that was just so we can change our weapon. Did I almost went Super Saiyan in real life fighting him?
Pay attention, Horneto. Why are you targeting me?
Yes. Did I damage my throat's victory screaming after beating him?
Yeah!
Yes. Was it worth it? Yes! I don't wanna get horny bonked, but I can't really compare the feeling of beating FromSoft game boss after dying to him 100 times without using the word orgasmic or better than sex. So all I'm gonna say is that it mogs nihil, nihil, nihil is forever gonna be a redeemable jumpscare on my streams, and every time I hear it, it's gonna bring my cortisol levels to dangerously high. Just as much as it's gonna remind me of the pride I felt after beating his fanboy loving ass. Now that Mog was defeated, nothing stopped me from accessing Shadow of the Earth Tree for the last and final weapon of Goku's build, Dry Leaf Art. For a second I wasn't really sure if I can get them without killing any major bosses. This only goes to show how unprepared I was for this build. Basically I had an all-around idea of what the build is gonna look like, but I didn't research anything prior to actually playing. And that might be the reason why this build was not as good as it could be. I was basically winging it, hoping for the best and believing my non-existent skill will carry me through, thus making the cosplay more annoying and honestly weaker than it should be. Anyway, shout out to openness of Elden Ring and its DLC because I managed to get our weapon without killing a single enemy, not counting Dry Leaf then of course. After learning some martial arts, I've beaten Fire Giant and I have to say, this fight is easy but it didn't stop me from dying to him a couple of times. But at this point dying to him didn't even hurt me. Mog absorbed so much of my range, it just felt refreshing fighting anyone different than him. Fire Giant is a boss that's challenging only on your first playthroughs, but after figuring out how to deal with him, he will never cause you any troubles. I enjoyed this fight, it's pleasant, not too hard, but also keeps you on your toes, because the big ginger boy can still mess you up if you don't pay attention, like I did literally walking into his attacks. I respect how simple this fight is, because simple doesn't exactly mean it's bad. This fight doesn't overstay its welcome and it's easy to learn his moveset. I think this is the most Dark Souls boss-like fight in the entire Elden Ring. We sacrificed Bulma to progress our invasion further into the crumbling Farum Azula. I killed so many dragons up to this point and I haven't found a single Dragon Ball yet, so I took a page out of Sun Wukong's book, Goku was inspired by him in the end, and decided to get our immortality in a more unconventional way. We can't die if there is no death, right? The location itself didn't pose a threat until we reached Foreskin Nobles. It was a tough and a very unfair fight. Even when I had Vegeta's help I was struggling, but then something awakened inside of me. You see, Fire Giant held a piece of God inside of him, a fell god, and by consuming his soul I managed to tap into his godly energy myself. I called it God Ki, and with that, not only did I get stronger, but also managed to tap into a completely new type of ki control. My adversaries were clothed in God skin, so it was only fitting to fight them as God myself. Saiyans have a legend about a powerful being called a Super Saiyan, but I felt like it didn't quite show the true extent of it, so I decided to call it Super Saiyan God. With new form, I've also created a new technique. The Foreskin Nobles were dangerous together, so I decided the best outcome was not quite to separate them, but to bind them, so I could fight one of them at a time. Godbind is what I named it, and thanks to that, the fight was so hilariously easy, I vowed to never use this technique again. Later on I fought a Jar, and despite him being a proud warrior, he stood no chance against the Super Saiyan of legend. Not really a fight, more like a beatdown. I don't have a lot to say about Malekith except for the fact, like with many other bosses before, I've never actually fought him enough to learn his moveset. I love fighting him, but my Unga Bunga brain always made me just tank his attacks with the hope that I'll deal more damage than he deals. Despite me struggling against him in almost every playthrough, he's definitely in the top 5 of my favorite bosses, and his weapon is my absolute favorite in the entire game. My relationship with Malekith's blade is the exact same as we all have with Stealth Archer in Skyrim. No matter the build I have in mind, no matter the character I create when I'm playing for myself, after Malekith I just feel the dark urge to use his weapons. It's whispering to me like a Zanpakuto trying to teach me its name so I can unlock Shikai. I'm not a Shinigami though. Yet. After we finally reached our immortality and burning the Air Tree too, I guess, we revisited Leyndell capital that honestly didn't look like itself, more like France celebrating a football match victory, or rioting after losing it. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing. On our way to the ash-covered castle, we met a warrior saying something about him being made of DNA of the greatest fighters of Earth, and I could definitely see it because he was using techniques of all the enemies I've defeated thus far. Mother Butter was really scavenging after each of my battles. I sent a powerful presence somewhere in the distance that distracted me. Since I thought this so-called perfect being calling himself Cell was my last worry here, I decided to go on a side adventure. We reached another tree, but unlike the one that we burned some time ago, this one was rotting and it didn't have that godly golden aura to it. Although scaling the tree itself wasn't very difficult, the garden of it was a different story. Her bow and sword summoning techniques were commendable, but not strong enough. That ground-shaking power level we felt was getting closer and closer, so we decided to prepare ourselves a little, collecting more Senzu beans to boost our Senzu class to its utmost limit, and reliving another training arc to get stronger before actually reaching her. Malenia Blade of Miquella. I have a love-hate relationship with her. I think she's a very cinematic boss with actual ways to beat her. I've never fought her with such a build, so this was kinda new experience for me. My usual tactic for her was always using Black Blade's Ash of War into Black Blade incantation, then run away from a waterfall and capitalizing on some fire orbs while jumping attack her to death. Now I actually had to relearn how to fight her. I think of Malenia as a very enjoyable fight. At least I would think that of her if it wasn't for the waterfowl dance, that I know how to outrun, I know how to bait it, but I don't know how to dodge it from point blank range. She's already plenty challenging without her light steal and waterfowl bullshit. The latter I think would be way better if it had more frames you can dodge through, but I learned really soon you can stagger her into a decent combo, but not every time. The attacks that I most often punished and basically countered as she did them was the barrage that started with a spark of her prosthesis. With Dry Leaf Arts, I figured the best attack I can do is run up heavy because it has a big stagger potential, decent damage and allowed me to quickly reposition myself in case I sensed a waterfall coming. Her second phase was not much different, the added attack of her summoning her clones, but even then I allowed myself to summon Vegeta because after so many close calls in which I almost beaten her, just for her to do a cheeky waterfall point blank range at me, I was not gonna take any chances. Did he carry me? I wouldn't say so. I beat in her first phase cleanly enough. I think even without added help of my Saiyan Kamran, I would be able to beat her on this attempt. In the end, we died 132 times to her, which is only 12 times more than we did to Mog. The difference between those two was that Mog was killing me mostly due to the bullshit blood flame he was spewing everywhere, while Malenia was killing me mostly due to my lack of knowledge about her moveset, stagger ability and waterfall timing. In the end, I think I struggled against her less than with Mog. She killed me more times than he did, but I felt with each attempt I actually made better and better progress, learned more and more about her fight. But with Mog, I felt like I was just hitting my head on a brick wall waiting for a perfect blood flame RNG to actually not fuck me in the buzzy. While Mog was pure suffering and annoyance, Malenia was an actual boss that I didn't feel like I just had to beat. She was a challenge I had to overcome not only for the cosplay but for my own satisfaction. Welcoming Vegeta, aka Mimic Tier, this was the most solo attempt I've ever done on her. Usually resorting to help from summons, and while I don't see anything wrong with summoning when you actually need help, no need to suffer, games are supposed to be fun, not annoying, deep down I was never satisfied with just beating her. I wanted to actually defeat her. And this run got me closer to doing that more than I actually ever got. Foreshadowing and a slight spoiler, but in the next cosplay run I actually did beat her solo with no summons, and across my hundreds of hours into the game across PS4, PS5 and recently also on PC, the next run marks my first time ever beating her without summons and spirits, but that's neither here or there. When the biggest power level so far has been eradicated, nothing left was standing in my way of conquering the earth. Or so I thought. When I came back to Leyndell from my little side mission, I met with an unpleasant surprise. Someone else was standing in my way, again literally a couple of steps from the throne. This time it was so-called Godfrey, that we've already fought before but only in a spirit form. I've heard stories about him, he's supposed to be super strong. His key seems somewhat familiar but weakened, like he was hiding something. We squabbled for a while and he was indeed formidable but nowhere near the strength of Malenia. Soon enough my suspicions were proved right. He was indeed limiting his power, but not only that, he was also hiding his true nature. He wasn't Godfrey, his real name was Broly, and he, just as I or Vegeta, was a Saiyan. He fought well, and he fought hard, but in the end he didn't manage to stop my ambitions. The only question left in my head was why he was here. He was probably sent here as a child, maybe hit his head and lost his memories. Many Saiyans before tried to take over this planet, none of them ever came back. One can't help but wonder, if the roles were reversed, would I be the one standing here defending the Earth Tree, and would he be against me trying to conquer it? Either way, Broly pushed me so far I've actually unlocked yet another form. My body was moving on its own, like led by a pure instinct, and since my power increased so much, I couldn't help to think of any other word than Ultra. So I decided to name the form Ultra Instinct. Right after Broly, whose strength was nothing less than legendary, I was forced to face yet another legend, the original first godly Super Saiyan, Yamoshi. He was indeed a mighty warrior, but it didn't take long for my body to learn how to fight him on its own. I thought that it was it. The god of our glorious warrior race must have been the last opponent, until... Turns out there was something or someone even bigger standing behind this escapade. The reason why Earth was so hard to conquer was because it had a protector in the shape of a god of destruction. I only heard stories and rumors about him, but if they were to be believed, he was the pinnacle of strength, not only among mortals, but even among other gods. But the thing was, at this point I wasn't just a mere mortal. I, myself, was a god, possessing a powerful form of Ultra Instinct, making it possible to actually scale to the Great Destroyer. In the end, even the god of destruction was not safe from getting destroyed, and I, Kakaroto, a Saiyan warrior, claimed my victory and a well-deserved throne of the land between, also called Earth. In the end, sitting on my throne, recognizing that my life will now be more empty than ever, Because all the great enemies that could give me a fair fight were dead, I couldn't help but wonder. What separates a king from his horse? Thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Remember to keep it buzzy. Bye!